Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rucha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. Name of this one is For He is a Liar and the Father of It. This is dealing with Esau, the devil, of course, and, the tumultuous amount of, or the massive amount of lies and deceptions that this devil has pushed out there. Now, there's a lot of evidence and proofs around the world, here in the Americas, and evidences that the peoples that were here, the so-called Indians that were here, were Israelites or are Israelites. But he destroyed a lot of the records, and pretty much he paid off people to not accept it. And they fight tooth and nail to try to bring up some cockamamie BS to so-called debunk facts. And the fact in question is the Paraiba stone, which is which was found back in 1872, I believe it was, down in Brazil. And you're looking at a facsimile copy of it, which is a copy of it, and as you can see, this is the Canaanite or Sidonian Canaanite style or form of the Hebrew, the Paleo-Hebrew. And this inscription proved that the Sidonians, which we've been saying is for a long time, I just recently found out about this. We've been saying for years that those Sidonians, which are Canaanites, Hamites, which were a part of Hiram's navy, which King Solomon hired. We've been saying that they've been coming, or that they came over to the Americas prior to Christopher Columbus. And this is the reason why the 10 tribes knew that this side of the world existed. All right. Now, I wanted to do this lesson with the elder Kanak, but the brother is very busy, but he still makes time, for myself, so I appreciate that from the brother, but he's very, very busy. He's very, very busy. Inside joke. But, if he happens to walk in the house after he takes care of the business he takes care of, and if I'm still live, if he wants to jump on in, he could feel free. But nevertheless, this is just a facsimile or a copy of the actual writings of this stone that was found. It's an inscription, Sidonian inscription written in the Canaanite language, which is pretty much Paleo-Hebrew. They just had a little, if you look at this and you look at our form or our Paleo-Hebrew, the letters are slightly a little different, but they're pretty much the same. Now, I want to start off with this scripture. This was Yahushai cursing out those wicked Pharisees and Sadducees. But this application here is dealing with Esau, or pretty much dealing with the serpent in the garden. And the serpent in the garden was not an actual serpent. It wasn't a reptile or serpent or whatever the hell they call that. It was an actual man. An actual man of color, by the way, a brown-skinned man of color in the garden that had that demonic spirit in him that was later passed. That spirit, that demonic spirit that was out there was passed through unto Cain and his descendants. And after the flood, it was passed into the Edomites, Esau and the Edomites. All right, so Yahushua told these wicked Pharisees and Sadducees that they were just like their father, the devil. St. John 8:44, you are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth. Going back to the serpent, going back to Cain. And he didn't abide in the truth because the Lord said, if you do well, then shall thou not be accepted. That's why it says, let favor be shown to the wicked, yet will they not learn righteousness, because there is no truth in him. And that's the point. Esau's truth is nothing but deception. They don't really have truths. They have deceptions. That's what they hold to be truth. And anything that's true is an offense to him. It's there's a word, it's troublesome to him. There's other words, but we'll just use those words right there. It's and it's in the way of him. It says, when he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. So these devils are liars and the fathers of it. And this is why you have today plantation / Renaissance Christianity teaching the madness that they teaching, because he created those lies. And Jake just followed along with it. But they followed along with it because that's the portion that was given to them. All right. They didn't receive the truth, so they delighted in lies. So guess what? Those lies are going to be their destruction. That's going to be their demise. So I'll put these pages in the description box. This is Gnostic Warrior, right? This is the Paraiba inscription, 6th century BC, Phoenician Masonic script of the Merchant King and King Hiram. All right, this was dated October 13, 2015. Ancient American History of the Brotherhood, Phoenicians, 2 comments. Now, I'm not going to read it yet. I'm going to come down to this paragraph and the paragraph down below, because I want to highlight a point in here, because we read that he is a liar and the father of it. So this individual here that wrote this page, he pretty much went through the research, and he pretty much was also convinced that this inscription is authentic. So the individual that found it, right, he authenticated it, but then later recanted his statement. And I'm going to show you how that went about. So even though there is extensive evidence that the Phoenicians had colonized Brazil, and an army of experts willing to back these facts up, because it was evident. There was so much evidence, that corroborated, this evidence. All right. It said the Paraiba text has garnished a tremendous amount of controversy, with many experts contending it is authentic, right? So they have a beef. Other individuals or so-called experts are contending with the other experts that deem it to be factual, true. Why? Because you have to understand that there is a narrative, a storyline, a history that has been taught to the world for the last 500 years or more. And if these facts are factual, then they will have to rewrite history books. They will have to rewrite, history itself. It would change the face of everything that people know today. It says, and others who seem to be hell-bent on supporting the mainstream historic narrative claim that it is a fake. And that's the point. It's a mainstream historic narrative. And that's what Esau does. He'll say something, then somebody will hear it, repeat it. Then somebody else will hear it, repeat it. Then you will hear like a news clip about it. Or you might read a column in a magazine somewhere about it, or in the newspaper. And after a while, it just becomes a part of the norm. And people accept it. Like extremism or black extremists, or back in the 60s, the word was communist. And they're just throwing, today, you have conspiracy theorists. So they throw these sayings out there, these phrases out there, and people just start to bite on it. And because the majority of people believe they go with the majority, they dismiss that it's factual. But that goes totally against the scriptures. Let's get there real quick, and then we'll come back to this. And it's not like these devils don't know these scriptures. Exodus 23 and 2. Matter of fact, I've started one. Thou shalt not raise a false report, put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. And that's what these individuals are doing. They're putting their hands with the wicked, even though they may be the wicked also, to be an unrighteous witness. Because if you look at the evidence is there. And when it was found, it was authenticated. Esau's big on authenticating things. But all of a sudden, nope, it's a forgery now. It's not real. You know, the individual recanted his statement. I wonder why. But I'm going to show you why. It says, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrestle judgment. And that's pretty much what they're doing here. They're wrestling judgment by having certain experts go against the experts that say it's true, and then pushing the mainstream narrative that it's fake, so the majority of people will follow behind it. It says, this battle of experts always seems to occur when an ancient artifact is found that tears down the current historical foundation built upon the sands of lies. And that's exactly what it is, because these facts, which are true, they blow away the sands of lies of, you know, the story that has been told dealing with who the Israelites are. Who are these people that are here in this land? There was so much information, and there's still a lot of information out there. But just imagine the tons and tons of evidences that were erased when they burnt those records. You know, when the Spaniards got over, you know, to the so-called New World. Just bear with me a second. Freaking dog next door be having multitudes of demons on him. All he does is bark all goddamn day. All right, so they, you know, so the truth prevails over all of these lies. So it's the sands of lies. Okay. Now, when we jump down here to this, and we're going to get up to, you know, further up, you know, so you can see what this is all about. It said, it has been said that Dr. Netto, and this is the individual that in 1872 discovered the relic, authenticated it. So it has been said that Dr. Netto later changed his story and claimed the text was a forgery. Now, what is a forgery? A forgery is just a copy of something that's real. So if you say it's a forgery, that means that there was an actual real, you know, document that this was copied from. But nevertheless, one can only assume this was done after pressure from his fellow paid academics to support the historical narrative rather than truth, because Esau is not about truth. The truth is garlic to these devils. The truth is the enemy to this devil. That's why it says in the Apocrypha, right? Another book that they try to deny, 2nd Ezra, chapter 6 and verse 28. It says, as for faith, it shall flourish. Right, because faith at one time was dormant. When the truth came out, it started to flourish. Corruption shall be overcome. How will the corruption be overcome? By the truth. And the truth, which had been so long without fruit, shall be declared. And that's what's happening right now. The truth is being declared, and the truth is uncovering the lies that Esau pushed on the world, and it's making them look bad. This is a part, or this is the main part of the Lord spewing shameful spewing on their glory. Because these truths cut to the gut. I mean, the slices are deep. You know, it goes, you know, it's blood all over the place. Forget about it. So it says, this same story is played out all over the world in thousands of cases such as this. So basically what the individual is saying is that there's been so much evidence on a lot of different things that will change the narrative of the history of the world. But because you have those that are in power and they have the sway over other individuals that call themselves experts and they have the so-called credentials, they won't allow the truth to come out, and that's why you have something called um, gatekeepers. All right, gatekeepers are those that allow information in and keep information out. And like Voltaire said, which was a French philosopher, he said, history is the lie commonly agreed upon. All right. So let's go into this individual, Netto, Netto. That's his last name. This is him right here. Or should I say, this is what they say when they so-called debunked this theory of Phoenician discovery of the Americas. Now, I put this in the description box. You could go back and watch it. And these are the types of ships that the Phoenicians had to sail. All right. Now, when we scroll down to alleged artifacts, because this is a way of trying, just like when you look up a New World Order, they say it's a conspiracy. You look up certain things that are facts, they'll say they're conspiracies. That's why it says theory of Phoenician discovery of the Americas, already casting doubt to the reader that is unsuspecting, to control the narrative. Now, let's go to alleged artifacts. Here we go. In 1872, a stone inscribed with Phoenician writing was allegedly discovered in Paraíba, Brazil. See, again, allegedly, no theory. These words are all set to cast doubt on the reader's mind. And most people that are researching it are not experts or like these so-called experts. Okay. So they'll be like, okay, if they say it's an allegedly, or if it's a forgery, or if it's a theory, then it must be. It said it tells of a Phoenician ship which, due to a storm, was separated from a fleet sailing from Egypt around Africa. It also mentions the Pharaoh Necho I or Necho II. A transcription was shown to Ladislao Sousa Melo Neto. This is the individual right here. The inscription was given to him. He actually studied it, right? He says, Director of the National Museum of Brazil. Neto first accepted the inscription as genuine because it was, or it is. But the problem is, remember, we read about the ones that paid him, or the paid associates. It says, but by 1873, just a year later, philologist Ernest Renan, this devil right here, convinced him that it was a forgery. Okay? And what happened? Its letter forms vary from those that occurred. So this individual here, Ernest Brennan, so-called, convinced him that it was a forgery. It wasn't even genuine. And he was pressured to give, that statement. Now, who is this guy, Ernest Renan? Ernest Renan is the devil, in short. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. It says, Joseph Ernest Renan, French, February 23rd, 2nd October 1892, was a French Orientalist and Semitic scholar, already strike one, writing on Semitic languages and civilizations. So basically, he was an expert in what was already taught about Semitics or Shemites. Now, at first, we thought that he might have been a small hat, which he might still be, but he also brought out facts that those Ashkenazis, JOOSs, are pretty much Khazars, which that is a fact. That is true. So he doesn't accept them. But he accepts, because you got to understand that Esau here in America, the Bible Belt Edomites, the ones that are Edomites, and some of them are Jake, they hold that they are the Israelites. You see? So if this devil here deemed everybody outside of the so-called white race to be underneath them, and for the so-called white race to be the best or the superior race, this discovery destroys his whole argument and destroys history. You see? Just one out of many. It says, It says historian of religion, philologist, philosopher, biblical scholar, and critic. He wrote works on the origins of early Christianity and espoused popular political theories, especially concerning nationalism, national identity, and this is important. Keep listening. And the alleged superiority of white people over other human races. So now you understand why he twisted the other dude's, twisted his arm, so to speak, for him to recant his statement and to say that what he thought was genuine or authentic, meaning Neto, it was actually a forgery, but it was not. It's the truth. And and it's funny because when I found out, that they so-called debunked it, I said, okay, who did it? Ernest Running. As soon as I went to this guy's page, the first thing that caught my eye was this, that he feels that the so-called white race is superior over others. And I said, close the book. That tells me everything I need to know about this devil. So we can get rid of this hole. Now, let's go back to the article, the Paraiba inscription, 6th century BC, Phoenician Masonic script of the Merchant King and King Hiram. Now, keep in mind that when you look at this picture, they had him looking like a so-called white man. And we know that Hiram was a Canaanite, which was dark skinned. They were not white-looking people. All right. So you're gonna but this is something that came later, because this is a stained glass somewhere, probably somewhere in Europe or somewhere. It says the Paraiba stone inscription is a script of Phoenician text dated approximately the 6th century BCE that was found in Paraita, the easternmost state of Brazil. So they're saying that it was dated to 6th century BC, but it's further back than that. Because remember, the Israelites, the northern kingdom, left the Assyrian captivity roughly around 724, around there, between 724, possibly 720 BC in that time period. And the Phoenicians were already coming to this side of the world, which we're going to go through some precepts and scriptures on that. All right. It says, the text tells of the Phoenician Masonic merchant king and King Hiram, all right, which we read about in the scriptures, who is called Tyrion, King Hiram III, 554 to 533 BCE in the text. The Paraiba inscription also mentions the Sidonian Canaanites, who are also known as the Phoenicians, right? Because the Sidonian Canaanites, which are Canaanites, they were in those lands, in those regions. All right. So they would be, well, really technically, the Palestinians go back, I believe that's the Philistines, which the Philistines are really Mizraim. All right. When you go back, I think it's in Genesis 10, it says Philistim, which are the Philistines, which go back to Mizraim. All right. But you did have Canaanites all throughout the land, what today is, or the Levant, or what today is called Israel, Palestine, so on and so forth. And these Phoenicians were Canaanites that descended from this. One of the sons of Canaan was the Sidonians, right? Who set sail around Africa and ended up on the shores of Brazil, right? Because this is how the Israelites knew how to track that same course, because you had two navies. Should I say two main ports? You had two navies. You had King Solomon's navy, and then you also had Hiram's navy. But you had two different ports. All right. I don't think we need this anymore. Let me Tarshish. Let's see if they'll give us a map with Tarshish on it. Boom. Beautiful. First one. Let's see what we got. Beautiful. Tarshish, which is what? Here in Spain. And then what did you have here in Spain? In Tarshish, you had a navy of King Solomon, right? But you also had a navy in Ezion Geber or Tezion Geber map, which would see what you will see here. Boom. See right there, Ezion Geber, Elath. This area here was fought between Esau and Judah. You know, they fought for this. And this is the Gulf of Aqaba, which is the easternmost of the two gulfs, you know, of the Red Sea. You have the Gulf of Suez, which is on the west side, and you have the Gulf of Aqaba, which is on the east side. This is Ezion Geber, and this is where King Solomon had a navy also. But he also had a navy in Tarshish here. All right. And remember, those Sidonians were expert navigators. So let's go back. It says, during the 19th year of the reign of King Hiram, some 500 years BC, which is actually before that, the stone was said to be found in 1872 by slaves on the plantation of a man named Joaquim Alves de Costa. All right. Here is the complete Paraiba stone translation, which we're going to get into that. This is juicy, juicy, juicy. It says, we are children of Canaan from Sidon of the eastern kingdom of merchants and are cast. I pray here beside a central land of mountains with this offered choice gift of the most high gods and goddesses in the year 19 of King Hiram. I pray still strong from the valley of Ezion Geber of the Red Sea. Now, before we read on anymore, let's get that account. So you could see that in the scriptures, it speaks about the same Hiram. Okay. 1 Kings 9 and 26. And King Solomon made a navy of ships in Ezion Geber, which we just showed you, Ezion Geber, which is right here. All right. The Gulf of Aqaba. Some put it up here at the top, some put it there. It's in this region there. All right. It says, which is beside Eloth. And we just saw that you had Eloth right there. Okay. It says, on the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. The land of Edom, which is south of Judah. And the Deacon Akar cut the shit out of Ron Dalton with that, to where he just said, well, if the white man says it was there millions of years ago, then that's what it is. If it predates the Bible, then it just predates the Bible. Some goddamn bare bones. God damn. It says, and Hiram sent in the navy his servants, shipmen that had what? Knowledge of the sea, meaning they knew how to navigate. They were experts. You know, Elder Apostle Gabar years ago did a lesson where he went into the different currents. Now, if you type in currents of the seas or currents of the oceans, it'll give you currents and how they navigate and come over to the side of the world. Now, the heavy thing about it is when you're out there in the open sea, the sea is treacherous. You had to be rough as hell to be a shipman, you know, to be out there in those seas, going fishing and all that. You couldn't be no Mo and be out there because that was horrific. That was like disastrous. Every time you went out could have been your last time. But the Lord was, we're going to read in the Apocrypha, the Lord held back that. Why? Because prophecy had to be fulfilled. Just like he held back the storms for the Sidonians to get over here, so that Israel could know about this land over here. Why? Because this land over here, the so-called Americas, especially North America, would play a very important part in the last day prophecies. It says they had knowledge of the sea with the servants of Solomon, and they came to Ophir, which Ophir is America. They'll tell you Ophir is, in Arabia and other places. You have some scholars that'll tell you that it's in America. So they're among Esau and his scholars. They don't agree with, breakdowns. They don't agree with prophecies. They're divided when it comes to that. But because it's the so-called white man, and because they have so-called certificates, and college degrees, then whatever they say is accepted. But nobody ever questions them about anything. And fetched from thence gold 420 talents and brought it to King Solomon. All right, now let's just get Hiram real quick, and then we're going to go to the other one. Hiram Horam Noble, the king of Tyre, who sent workmen and materials to Jerusalem to build both the palace of David and the temple for Solomon. And Hiram, or should I say King David, ruled around 1000 some odd BC. King Solomon like 900 some odd BC. So Hiram was also around for both King David and King Solomon. All right. And I would type that in, but just in it. What the hell with it? Why not? What year was Hiram the king? Oops. Hired. I just put hired by King David. How long did Hiram reign? There we go. Hold on for 1 second. So here it's saying Hiram, a Phoenician king, reigned from 980 to 947 BC. That's better. That's actually the closer time frame to King David and King Solomon. All right. Then it says here 10th century. Hiram, the Phoenician king of Tyre, was hired by King David to build a palace in the 10th century BC. See? All right. So now that we got that out the way, let's go back. Now we're going to go to 1 Kings, the 10th chapter. And the brother Shamar just came through the door. Matter of fact, if you want to read, brother.
Yeah, I can read it.
Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 10 and verses. You can start at 20. Yep, 21.
It's 1 Kings, you said 10 and 21?
Yes.
1 Kings 10 and 21. And all King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver. It was nothing accounted of. It was nothing accounted of in the days of Solomon.
Mm-hmm.
For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish,
mm-hmm.
with the navy of Hiram. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver, ivory and apes and peacocks.
Right. So there were this you had, like we showed you, you had two ports for the Navy. You had Tarshish, which is in Spain, and then you have Ezion-Geber, which is in the Gulf of Aqaba, all right, at the northeast of the Red Sea. Okay. So it says, for the king had at sea a navy of, Tarshish with the navy of Hiram once in 3 years. Why was it once in 3 years? Because it took them a year and a half to get over to this side of the world. Now, can we prove that? Well, yeah. You could go from there to 2nd Ezra 13. And we could start at 39. You know, and this is why these devils do not accept the Apocrypha as being authentic, because the Apocrypha destroys and demolishes their whole argument and the so-called historical facts that they put together. Their narrative of, you know, who the Israelites are and where the 10 tribes went on, the Apocrypha totally demolishes and destroys that. The Apocrypha totally demolishes and destroys the BS that they teach, that the Gentiles or the Greeks are talking about all nations. It was talking about the Israelites. And this is one of the main reasons why they don't accept the Apocrypha as being authentic. You know why? Because it destroys their lies. But go ahead.
This 2nd Ezra 13 and 39. And whereas thou sawest that he gathered another peaceable multitude unto him, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king.
Right, and Hosea was an Ephraimite king. Now, let's type in real quick, what year was King Hosea captured by Shalmaneser? Ninth year, King Hosea was captured by Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, in the 9th year of his reign. Yeah, but what year? What year was King Shalmaneser What year did King Shalmaneser capture Samaria? Let's just put that. 7th year. Come on, man. This is some bullshit.
They say 722.
Right. He said he died here in 722 BC. You know? So that lines up with, with the prophecy. All right? What you got? Can you read what you got?
From Google?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it says King Shalmaneser V captured the city of Samaria in 722 BCE. The siege began in 725 BCE, but the city fell to the Assyrian army under Shalmaneser V in the autumn of 722 BCE, according to Biblical Odyssey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so pretty much that's when it fell. And from that point on, we're going to go back to the Apocrypha. Was there more on that? Or was that the main point?
No, it's pretty much it. It said he died shortly after he captured it.
Okay, so let's go back. Read that verse again, verse 40.
Yeah, 2nd Ezra 13 and 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Shalmaneser, the king of Assyria, led away captive. And he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land.
Right, so this other land was what? This was Assyria. All right? And in the book of Second Kings, the 18th chapter, it gives you the cities, the main cities that they were brought to. Go ahead.
But they took this counsel amongst themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt.
Right. So while they were in this captivity of the Assyrians in those cities, I believe one of them was Halath, they said, you know what? We got to get away from these heathens. So they wanted to go to a place where they can keep the law, statutes, and commandments and get away from those heathens to a further country. It says where never mankind dwelt. So how did they know about this place where never mankind dwelt? Because when you go throughout those different regions, back then, pretty much those places that were in that area were all inhabited. Because remember, that was the cradle of civilization. That was the beginning of the repopulation of the earth through Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So where would they have gone to where there was a place where never mankind dwelt for them to keep these laws, statutes, and commandments? Well, over here to the so-called Americas, because this is about roughly 200, almost 300 years later after King David. So they knew about Hiram. They knew about the Sidonians. They knew about the Phoenicians and their expert navigation of the seas. And they knew about this place over here. But the thing was, when the Sidonians came over here, they did not colonize this place. All they did was get the wood and the precious stones and the gold and silver, whatever the case may be, and wood, trees, and bring them back for King David. That's what they did. Go ahead.
It says that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land.
Go ahead.
And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river.
Right. So they entered into Euphrates, which when you look at a map, let's see if we have a map. Okay, so let's get rid of these. Let's get rid of these, and let's get Euphrates River. Let me type it. I'm just taking a shot here. Let's see. Just trying to see if I'm not sure if they're gonna give me what I need here. It's kind of small, so damn. Nope, this map is trash. Let me just use this one. I wanted to get a better map, but to show you the whole of so-called Africa, or the land of Ham. Just bear with me a second. It's a high CPU usage, so sometimes it does this crap. Get rid of that. Damn. The hell? Satan gonna do what Satan does best. We're gonna push on. Let me see it with this one. Because we know some of you ain't gonna do this. Damn, this is horrible. Hey, back in the days, you'd be able to type in something and boom, everything comes up quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Now everything is like, all right, we got a big map here. Okay, these are rivers here, right? Which they didn't name them on this. I was hoping they would have. But this right here is the Euphrates River, even though shit's trash. This is the Persian Gulf. This is the Tigris River on the other side. And they both dump into the Persian Gulf. And I wish they had a map that was clearer. That was the crap. All right, so this is the Euphrates River, Tigris River, dump into the Persian Gulf, right? And then this goes around through the straits here and dumps out into the Indian Ocean. And then it comes down here. You have Madagascar. This is the bottom of Africa. And this is where they went. And if you type in currents, like currents of the oceans and all that, it'll show you that this right here kind of the currents go this way, come around, and then go up this way. All right. So that's where they went. So let's go back. Read that again.
Yeah.
Verse 43.
Yeah, 2nd Esdras 13 and 43. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over.
Right, because there's a lot of, you if you look at them different videos of that weather that's out there, it's treacherous. So the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Shai definitely got to be with you in order for you to get across those seas. Go ahead.
For through that country there was a great way to go.
Right, that's what they said. We'll go to a country that was far away, where to go and go forth into a further country. See, so to that country, there was a great way to go. Go ahead.
There was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half.
So it took them a year and a half to get to this place. And how did they know that? Because the Sidonians were taking that trek back and forth every 3 years. Boom, there, grab the stuff, boom, come back. So it was like a revolving door. So it was, back then it was well known that this side of the world existed, but then somehow over time it was forgotten about. But you had maps and you had different things. One of them was a Piri Reis map. You had other individuals that knew about this place. So when they tell you about Columbus discovering the so-called New World, that was BS. He knew about it. His wife, her father, was a map maker or something, or so he was something, and he because if my memory serves me correctly, he actually provided him with certain maps, but he knew about this side of the world. That's why he was so adamant about it, coming over here. And he knew where he was going. He knew that the 10 tribes are already here on this side of the world. You see? So when they got over here, they were treated well, and they entreated us evil for good. And then you know the rest of the history. You see what the state of this society and how it's being run by these Edomites. All right, so go ahead.
For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Arsareth.
Right, the same region is called Arsareth, which is Achar Aratazar, which is another land. Another land. That's pretty much what it means. All right, so go ahead.
Then dwelt they there until the latter time.
Right. What was the latter times when Judah, Benjamin, and Levi started coming over to this side of the world, which was really shortly after the so-called discovery of the so-called Americas. Then Judah started coming over here, Benjamin, Levi, and everybody started coming back together, unbeknownst to them. And as you see today, what do you have? So-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians coming back together because this is part of the prophecy. All right. And the main land that this would happen would be where? Arsareth in America. Babylon the Great. Go ahead.
And now when they shall begin to come.
Meaning when the other three tribes are going to come over to this side of the world. Go ahead.
The highest shall stay the springs of the stream again.
Right. Because had it not been for that, a lot of those slaves, so-called slaves, would have not made it over here. And they had to get over here because the Lord had, the Lord is not a man that he should lie. He's going to fulfill prophecy. Go ahead.
That they may go through. Therefore sawest thou the multitude with peace.
Right. So that's pretty much it, right? No matter of fact, read the next verse.
But those that be left behind of thy people are they that are found within my borders.
Right. And those were the ones that were back then until they were run out by the Romans, went into different parts of Europe, India and all that. But a good bulk of them ran down into the interiors of so-called Africa, where they remained for a period of roughly about 1,500 years before Esau started bringing them over here to the so-called New World. And this was all set up for prophecy. All right, now let's go back to 1 Kings 10 and 22.
1 Kings 10 and 22. For the king had at sea a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram.
Mm-hmm.
Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver, ivory and apis and peacocks.
Yep. So pretty much that's, once every 3 years. So the voyage was 1.5 years, and that's how they knew about it. And they knew about the different routes. And what was it? They weren't near Spain. They were near the Euphrates. They were near, Ezion Geber in that area. So they would have to go that route. So they knew both routes, but that was the closest to get, out of that area. See? So that's how they came over to this side of the world. Once in 3 years. And that's 1.5 years here, 1.5 years back. Now, when you look at this word peacocks, which I'm not going to do in this lesson, this is not talking about the actual peacock that you see. It's talking about really the turkey, which is native to the Americas. All right. It's called Gallopavos. So it's not talking about, actual peacock, because peacocks are I believe they're native to India. But the turkey is native to the so-called Americas. Thakayayam. And I haven't gone over this in a long time. So let's see. Domestic birds. Right here. Also, pavo. Pavo is turkey. All right. So it's the pavo. Pavo is a turkey, as you see right there. All right. So that's pretty much it on that. So as you can see, these devils, they had to hide this information, because if this thing was made known on a broad scale, the world would wake up to find out the truth of who the Israelites really are, and that would destroy their lives. Now I'm going to go back to this article. I mean, if you have any scriptures or whatever, feel free to bring them out.
I have one for yourself.
Okay, where you at?
2 Corinthians 10 and 4.
All right, let me grab that real quick. So you don't have to kick Esau's ass right now. We could do that in the kingdom. All you got to do right now is beat him up with the truth. Go ahead.
2 Corinthians 10 and 4. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through Yahweh Hashem Yahushai to the pulling down of strongholds.
Did you want to say something on it?
Yeah, like everything you've been going into. The reason that Esau been hiding all these things is because it's really, he doesn't want to get those lies, destroyed that he's been telling for the longest, because like the saying goes, history is his story. So like everything he pretty much told you when you was going to middle school or high school in history is pretty much all the stuff that he wanted you to know and learn about. So then he tried to hide it away from the scriptures, like the apostle was going into with the Apocrypha. That's why it's so important to have it, because it goes into all the history that he does teach, but at the same time he holds back a lot of the information. And the scriptures connect those that gray area, so to speak, the missing link. The Apocrypha connects the dots, so that is no way it's no way possible to deny that pretty much the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are the Israelites. It's literally right there. It's plain, clear as day to see what it is when you have the Apocrypha that line it up.
Yep. And the thing about it is, it destroys their narrative. Now, when you go to the small hats, they have something called the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. In Protocol 16, it says that they're going to destroy anything in history that sheds a negative light on them. I'm just merely paraphrasing. But they're going to keep everything in place that brings a bad light on the so-called goyim, as they call the goyim. But anything that makes them look bad, they're going to erase from history. They got the power. This is why in 1921, I believe it was, when they established the CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, the first thing that they did through that corporation or that company, whatever we want to call it, was to buy out all major news sources, radio, newspaper, magazines, so on and so forth. And this is how they've been controlling the narrative. So every time they take over a place, what they do is they control the story that goes out. They control the news that goes out.
Yep.
And
you notice that with prime example of recently is with RT. They had RT America, and then that was going on for a long period of time, and they started going heavy into exposing a lot of the stuff that they was doing in America. Mm-hmm. But then what happened? Like the apostle was saying, they control the media. So then they tried to say like, oh, this isn't a good false. This is fake news basically, and then they tried to just cancel RT America as a whole. Yep. So now you can't even just go and it's not easily accessible to just go and watch it like you could at one point. But it's showing you how they want to control the narrative. If it ain't what they want to push, they're going to find a way to try to shut it off.
That's it. And that's what the devil does. That's why the name of the lesson is for he is a liar and the father of it. All right, so go ahead,
verse 5, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Hamashiach.
You can speak on it if you want.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what the truth is doing. Casting down all those different imaginations that Esau had. All those different lies that he's been pushing and all those different narratives he's been telling for the longest, bringing out the truth is just destroying all his stories and narratives that he pushed. And this is why the truth is the biggest enemy of Esau Edom, aka the so-called white man, because it's showing who he really is. For the longest, he's been getting away with denying who he was, saying that he's the chosen people, that he's a good guy, he's this and that. Everything but what he actually is, And now we're in the times where he's being revealed, he's being exposed. And that's why he's going to come at a certain point in time where he's going to start to, ban you being able to have pretty much so-called freedom of speech. Which really the reason he wants to ban that is because ultimately us bringing out this word. All right, because you have those different truthers and whatnot out there, but they're still not fully connecting the dots. All these guys that say that goes into the conspiracy theories, this and that, that's cool and all, but they don't really hit it all the way home, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And the scriptures does that. And that's why ultimately he wants to do away with, the Bible, really. And you being able to have this freedom of speech to bring out the truth.
Yeah, because it's the main threat to Esau is the truth. Matter of fact, you finished with that?
Okay.
You can go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 8. I'll read a little bit more of this here.
Oh, you want me to go ahead and read it? Or?
Yeah, go ahead.
The 2 Thessalonians 2:8. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming.
Right. Yeah, so the Lord's going to consume and reveal Esau, with the spirit of his mouth. What's the spirit of the Most High's mouth? His words, which are used by the prophets to bring out the truth. Now, I'm going to read this scripture real quick in the book of Hosea, unless you can get it, 6 and 5, just to show you that.
It's Hosea 6 and 5. Therefore have I hewed them by the prophets, I have slain them by the words of my mouth.
Beautiful.
And thy judgments are as the light that goeth forth.
Right. So therefore have I hewed them by the prophets. I have slain them by the words of my mouth, and thy judgments are as the light that goeth forth. So this is how Esau's lies are being destroyed, because it's only, a lie can only go so far. A lie can only work so much, because every time you lie, you got to keep chasing that lie with another lie, until eventually you're going to run out of options. And that's when your whole shit is going to unravel. And what we see is Esau's lies unraveling all over the world, but most people are not going to see it because they're stuck in that web of deception, but the ones that can see will be able to see it and get away from them. And even of their own people, you have some that see the BS and they get away from them. But it doesn't matter. If you're an Edomite, if you're of another nation, you're going into captivity anyway, But the truth is the truth, and that's what this is what's destroying Esau's lies. Did you want to say something?
Oh, no.
Okay. Matter of fact, finish up in verse 9, and I think after that we can close it.
Hosea 6 and 9?
No, I'm sorry. 2 Thessalonians 2 and 9.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Read the 8th verse again.
Hosea in 2 Thessalonians.
2 Thessalonians 2 and 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, read that again, because we only read part of it.
The 2 Thessalonians 2 and 8. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming.
Right, because before the Lord destroys these devils, he's going to expose them first, which he has, and he's been doing it. This is why you have so many different brothers out there doing different lessons, and countless and numerous lessons. And now some brothers just have the spirit just to anything that Esau does, just reveal them. The brothers in Indianapolis have a series called for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, where they're bringing out a whole lot of different histories and different accounts of shit that Esau's done, because all of this is a part of the revealing of this devil before the Lord can bring the destruction upon him. Go ahead.
Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders.
Right, because they are the devil. They're the physical counterpart of the spiritual demon Satan on the planet Earth, the Edomites. That's why they're known as the wicked. And the Lord is revealing them. But they're still going to fight tooth and nail. They're not just going to give it up. They're not just going to say, okay, you're right. We're wrong. We're going to go into captivity. No, they're not going to give all this up. They fought tooth and nail. They fought hard for centuries to get to where they're at right now, and everything is finally within view for them. You think they just gonna give it up just like that? No, sir. You have something you want to say, a few words or any precepts you want to bring out?
Well, that's pretty much like the times that we in, because years back, like 10 years ago, around that time or sooner and earlier on, Esau wasn't really getting exposed like he is now. He was still able to have that tell his lies and do what he wanted to do. But now we're in the time that America's coming to an end, and really his kingdom is coming to an end. That's why he's being exposed the way that he is before he's destroyed.
That's it. All right. So with that, we pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time we say, Shalom.
Shalom.